Don't forget to hit that like button, drop your comments below, and subscribe so you never miss our new content. It was one of those perfect late May afternoons where the sun hangs low and everything just glows. I was outside messing around with my flower beds, not really doing much, just soaking up the warmth and that fresh-cut grass smell. The week had dragged on forever, and my house felt extra empty lately. My neighbor Martha usually kept me company with some friendly conversation across the fence, but she'd taken off a few days ago to see her sister upstate. So imagine my surprise when I spotted someone moving around at her place. But it wasn't Martha, it was Leo, her son. I barely knew the guy. He lived somewhere far away with some fancy-sounding career and only showed up maybe twice a year to visit. He was young, probably early 30s, tall and lean with this serious vibe about him. Dark hair that always looked a little messy. We'd exchanged pleasantries before, a quick wave, maybe a hey if we happened to be outside at the same time. That was pretty much it. We definitely weren't close. He was struggling with one of those huge recycling bins, the lid swinging around wildly. He looked up, caught me staring, and flashed this kind of awkward smile. I gave him a friendly wave back and made a big show of focusing on a stubborn weed near my roses. Figured that would be the end of it. That's usually how it went. Then I heard footsteps crunching on the gravel between our driveways. I looked up again, squinting against the sun. Leo was heading straight for me, wiping his hands on his jeans. He stopped a few feet away and leaned against the little white fence separating our properties. "Hi, Helen," he said. His voice was deeper and smoother than I remembered, not the rushed greeting I was used to. "Oh, hi, Leo," I answered, pulling off my gardening gloves. "Didn't think I'd see you here. Is Martha home already?" "Not until tomorrow night," he explained. "I just came down early. Had some vacation time. Thought I'd open up the house and maybe knock out a few things for her before she gets back." He nodded toward Martha's place. "Figured those recycling bins were a good starting point." "That's really sweet of you," I said, and I meant it. Martha absolutely adored him, you could just tell. She was always going on about how busy he was, but how he always found time for her. She's going to love that. He nodded, his eyes wandering over my garden for a second. They were this really warm shade of brown, observant eyes. "Your flowers always look incredible," he said. "Mom's constantly trying to keep up with yours." I laughed a little. "Well, Martha gets all the good sun. Mine need a lot more attention." We just stood there for a minute, the silence filled only by the distant hum of someone's lawnmower down the street. It felt kind of weird talking this long. We'd never chatted for more than half a minute before. Then he shifted, looking right at me again. "Actually, Helen," he started, and there was this little hesitation in his voice that made me really pay attention. "I was just about to brew some coffee. Bought way too much from this place downtown. Would you maybe want to come over for a cup?" I blinked. "Coffee?" With Martha's son, my brain went into overdrive. Why was he asking? Just being neighborly since his mom wasn't around? Maybe he was bored. It felt random. We had basically nothing in common, 20 years between us and totally different lives. A weird feeling went through me. Surprise, maybe, or uncertainty. "Oh," I said, buying myself a second. "Coffee. That's really nice of you, Leo." I glanced at his mom's house, then back at him. He wasn't fidgeting or avoiding eye contact. Just looking at me, steady and open. I couldn't see any weird motive, just a simple invitation. "No pressure at all," he added quickly, probably picking up on my hesitation. "Just thought I'd offer. Making a whole pot for myself seems kind of silly." He smiled again, more relaxed this time. Maybe it was the way the sunlight hit his eyes, or just how unexpected this whole thing was, or the fact that my own silent house suddenly didn't sound so great compared to actual conversation, even if it might be awkward. Maybe I was just curious. What's the harm in coffee? It was just the neighbor's kid who happened to be home early. "You know what?" I said, straightening up and making a snap decision. "That actually sounds nice. Give me 5 minutes to clean up." His smile got bigger, reaching all the way to his eyes. "Great. Yeah, no rush. I'll get it started. Front door's unlocked whenever you're ready." He turned and jogged back toward Martha's porch. I watched him go. This weird mix of nerves and curiosity bubbling up inside me. What was I doing? This was probably nothing, just a polite gesture. But some little voice inside me, one I hadn't heard in forever, whispered that maybe it was something more. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the smell of roses and the coming rain, then headed inside. My heart was beating just a tiny bit faster than normal. This was definitely not what I expected today. Walking across the grass between our houses felt strangely important, like I was crossing more than just a lawn. The 5 minutes I'd asked for turned into closer to 10 as I changed out of my dirty gardening clothes, brushed my hair, and put on some lipstick, something I almost never did unless I was actually going somewhere. Why all the effort? I asked myself in the bathroom mirror. It's just coffee. But my reflection showed pink cheeks that hadn't been there before. Martha's front door was unlocked, just like he said. I pushed it open carefully and called out, "Leo, it's Helen." In the kitchen, his voice came back, followed by the sound of mugs clinking. Martha's kitchen looked exactly how I remembered, cozy and a little cluttered in a homey way, with bright yellow walls and roosters on everything. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air. Leo stood by the counter, pouring dark coffee into 2 solid-looking mugs. He'd taken off his jacket, and with his sleeves rolled up, I could see surprisingly muscular forearms. He looked up when I walked in and gestured to the small table in the breakfast nook. "Have a seat," he said. "You take milk or sugar?" "Just a little milk, please," I said, sliding into one of the cushioned chairs. The nook looked out over Martha's backyard, which, unlike mine, was bathed in full afternoon sunshine. Her bird feeders were packed with activity. He brought the mugs over, setting one in front of me before sitting across from me. Up close, I could see little lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than his serious face let on. He wasn't boyish, despite being younger. There was something mature about him, a self-assurance. "Thanks again for this," I said, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "Smells amazing." "My one real weakness," he laughed. "Good coffee. Mom usually just does instant. Love her, but yeah." We started talking easily at first, about his drive down, the traffic, his mom coming back. He asked about my kids, actually remembering their names from things Martha must have mentioned. I told him about Sarah finishing up her master's degree and Michael settling into his new job on the other side of the country. It felt normal, neighborly, but then things shifted. He asked about my garden. Not just polite questions, but real ones about companion planting and dealing with pests. He actually knew his stuff. Turned out he'd volunteered at a community garden project in his city. We talked about that for a while, about the satisfaction of growing your own food, connecting with nature. It was unexpected common ground. He guided the conversation smoothly, asking thoughtful questions. Not nosy, just genuinely interested. He asked about my work. I do freelance bookkeeping from home. Not exactly exciting, but he listened like it was fascinating, asking about the challenges and benefits. He talked about his job too, something complicated involving data analysis for an environmental nonprofit. The way he described it, with real passion, made it sound way more interesting than I would have thought. The awkwardness I'd felt completely disappeared, replaced by this surprising comfort. Talking to him felt easy, natural. He had this way of really listening, really paying attention, that made me feel heard. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he leaned in slightly, the focused look in his eyes, the smart follow-up questions. I found myself opening up more than I planned, talking about how quiet the house was since the kids left, how my work could feel isolating sometimes, stuff I usually kept to myself. He didn't give me empty reassurances or try to fix it. He just nodded, acknowledging it. "Yeah, transitions are rough," he said quietly. "Big life changes always leave this weird empty space for a while, don't they?" He talked about moving to a new city a few years back, how lonely he'd been before finding his place. He wasn't comparing, just sharing that he understood. The sunlight dropped lower through the window, stretching long shadows across the table. We were on our second cup of coffee, though neither of us was really drinking anymore. The air felt different now, charged with something quiet but intense. It wasn't flirty, not in any obvious way. It was deeper, a connection forming, thread by invisible thread, in the quiet coziness of his mother's kitchen. I realized I hadn't felt this engaged in a conversation, this present, in a really long time. Not since Robert. Not for years. It was unsettling and thrilling at the same time. I looked at Leo, really looked at him, seeing past the neighbor's son label. I saw a kind, smart man with real depth, and the way he was looking back at me wasn't the polite disinterest of some younger guy making small talk with an older neighbor. It was open, curious, and unmistakably warm. The whole thing was dizzying. This casual coffee invite had become something completely different, something quiet and meaningful unfolding between us right there at Martha's kitchen table. The coffee went cold in our mugs. Outside, the birds got quieter as dusk started creeping in. We kept talking, jumping between topics. Books we'd read, places we'd traveled, even our philosophies on life. It was amazing how much we had in common, how easily we understood each other, even when we disagreed. There was a spark there, intellectual. Curiosity mixed with emotional understanding that caught me completely off guard. Leo brought up a documentary he'd watched recently about urban development and how it affects communities. It was something I actually felt pretty strongly about, having watched our own town change over the years. We talked forever about it, debating, sharing ideas. He didn't talk down to me or brush off my thoughts. He engaged, challenged, listened. It felt like a conversation between equals, almost like peers, despite the years between us. At some point, he got up to rinse the mugs. I offered to help, but he waved me off gently. "Stay put. You're the guest." I watched him move around his mother's kitchen with easy confidence. He seemed comfortable, but also somehow separate. A visitor temporarily inhabiting a familiar space. When he sat back down, he didn't jump right back into conversation. He just looked at me for a moment, thoughtful. "You know, Helen," he said slowly, his voice softer now. "My mom mentions you sometimes. Says you're one of the kindest people she knows." I felt my face get hot. "Oh, Martha's just biased," I deflected, a little flustered. "We just look out for each other." "Maybe," he said, a small smile on his lips. "But she also says you seem a bit lonely sometimes, since your husband died and the kids moved away." His directness took my breath away. It wasn't mean, just honest and frank. It hung there between us, impossible to ignore. I couldn't look at him right away, staring down at my hands on the table. "Well," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's an adjustment. You have to get used to the quiet. I can only imagine," he said softly, real empathy in his voice. Then he reached across the small table, not grabbing my hand, just lightly touching my forearm with his fingertips. It wasn't romantic, not exactly, but it was incredibly intimate. A simple acknowledgement, a point of contact that sent this surprising jolt through me, warm and electric. I looked up, meeting his eyes. They were full of understanding, no pity, just connection. "It's not easy," I admitted, barely above a whisper. "Sometimes it feels like that whole chapter is completely over and I haven't figured out how to start the next one." He held my gaze, his fingers still resting lightly on my arm. "Maybe chapters don't really close," he suggested. "Maybe they just blend into each other. New people come in, the story takes unexpected turns." His words hit deep. Unexpected turns like this afternoon. Like sitting here sharing personal stuff with my neighbor's son, feeling more understood than I had in years. The air practically crackled with unspoken thoughts. With the intensity of this sudden, deep connection, it was more than shared interests or good conversation. It felt like finding a hidden clearing in a dense forest, a place of quiet understanding and recognition. He eventually pulled his hand back, but the warmth stayed on my skin. The intimacy didn't fade. It settled between us, comfortable and real. We talked a bit more, but the energy had changed. Quieter, more reflective. He shared a little about a past relationship that had ended badly. Not in detail, but enough for me to understand he still carried some hurt. It made him seem less like just Martha's son, and more like a real